Welcome to the award-winning Superhuman Academy podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to give you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
Greetings, Super Friends, and welcome to this week's episode, which has been lovingly crafted thanks to a review from Plotten29 from the Netherlands, who says, very informative and inspiring, 4 stars, but we'll take it. Very cool and professional podcast, informative, inspiring, and fun. I love that the host has the guts to be real and vulnerable himself. Makes it easier for his guests to do so too, which makes the conversations better and more profound. Keep it up. Well, first off, thank you very much for the review, Plotten29. I don't know what that means, but I appreciate the review nonetheless. And for those of you who have not yet left a review on iTunes or wherever podcasts are downloaded, please take a moment to do so. On to today's episode. You guys, today we are joined by Roy Krebs. He is the co-founder and CEO of NaturalStacks, which is an open source supplement company that helps consumers improve mood, memory, and focus through targeted brain health products. Together with his team at NaturalStacks, he's on a mission to build 1 billion better brains. So you can imagine that he and I completely mind melded. In this conversation, I wanted to discuss and kind of suck out some of the knowledge that Roy and his team have developed doing so much research around brain performance, which, as you all know, is something that I am deeply, deeply passionate about. I wanted to learn about the ways that the brain works that I don't know about, emotions, moods, chemical balances, and I wanted to learn more about how we can influence those and optimize the performance of our brains on a chemical level. I spend so much time talking about the technique level and the habit level and the sleep and the nutrition, but how can we actually use supplementation and compounds to improve the performance of our brain and improve our mood, improve our attitude, improve our outlook. I have to say, I actually learned a ton in this episode, which is, it's not easy to teach me about how to hack the brain, but I learned so much from Roy. I really enjoyed the episode, and I know you will too. So please enjoy this episode with my super friend, Roy Krebs. Mr. Roy Krebs, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you doing?
Thanks, Sean. I'm pumped, man. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm really stoked to have you here as well, because you and I share a topic that we're both quite passionate about, which is the performance of the brain. Specifically, how do we hack it? How do we optimize it? How do we improve it? I'm a big fan of all things nootropic, and I have a long history with performance enhancing and improving substances. So I'm really stoked to talk with you about it and learn a lot about your experience.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And I saw your TED Talk, so it sounds like you've, whether you liked it or not, we're using some nootropics, synthetic nootropics for a while, yes. But it sounds like you might have found some alternative choices.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Roy, for our audience who hasn't had a chance to stalk you before this episode like I have, tell us a little bit about your superhuman origin story. How did you become passionate in this topic? I mean, where did you come from, and why is this your calling?
Sure. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of NaturalStacks, and we create brain health supplements. And it is kind of a roundabout story how I got there. I grew up in small town California, Monterey, California.
Oh, cool.
My parents are still there. And my parents are kind of hippies, let me do my own thing. What I understand now is that they trusted me and they gave me a lot of freedom, and I respected that. And I never really got in trouble. I wanted to be a good kid because my parents were giving me so much trust. And looking back on that, it's pretty powerful. But yeah. My father was an entrepreneur, and he was an architect. So he worked from home, and he kind of made his own hours. And I always looked up to that, the freedom that my father had. My mom was always hustling, different jobs. We didn't have much money. But I knew I had to work hard and kind of make something of myself. To be able to have my freedom and do anything worthwhile. So I was always an athlete. I played football in high school. I ended up playing football in college. I was the captain of my team, and just was like so fine-tuned with my body performance.
Wow.
And I was also a martial artist. So I have black belts in 2 different martial arts. Cool. And I was training a little bit at the same time I was doing football. and just an athlete. And I was stoked, and my body, my recovery time, my performance was all there. And I never realized that you could take a supplement or take a drug or take something for your brain.
Right.
I was so focused on my muscles and my recovery time and how much I could lift that, I never thought about, wow, what's going on in my brain. And it all kind of clicked. Several years after college, I got into the real estate industry, and I kind of thought that was my path. This is how I was going to be an entrepreneur. I had some family friends that were in the real estate business. I got my real estate license while I was in college. I was super motivated. So right when I came out of college, I jumped in. My timing was bad. So I graduated college 2007. The market crashed hard in 2008 and 9. My boss was struggling. I was literally getting paid a base commission of $1,500, and the rest was commissions that I had to drum up on my own. And I was hustling, and I got some deals done, but just not enough to survive, and I couldn't, make rent. So I started working in a hotel early mornings before work, and then after work, I was working in a restaurant. I was helping out a sushi chef, and I kind of roundabout way learned how to make sushi, which was kind of cool, but it was because I was desperate, and I was just working all day just to make ends meet. And I noticed myself that my brain, I was procrastinating a little bit, and I had a little bit of brain fog. And at the same time, my grandfather had just got diagnosed with Alzheimer's and dementia. And it was the first kind of major health problem in my family. My parents are super healthy, and my grandparents were super healthy. And my grandfather, his name was Roy as well. We knew he was a little bit loopy, but this was like serious. And his degradation just over a year or two just happened so fast. So it was pretty scary. And then, me being a football player, having my own brain fog and feeling of procrastination, I got freaking scared. And I really just got so passionate and dug in deep into the research of brain supplements. What can I take to improve my brain now and get some real results, but also what's going to be good for the long term, make sure that I have, this cognition for the next 100 years. So yeah, that's kind of how the whole journey began. I started looking at the brain supplement market, and I wasn't happy with really what I saw, and found these formulas that we've championed at NaturalStacks, and it's been a kind of a long roundabout road, but yeah, that's how it all came to be. Wow.
I love that, because I also had this roundabout way of figuring out. And for me, my path into it was, I can't pay attention in school. And I ended up getting medicated heavily for the vast majority of my life up until this point. But then you discover that there's this whole world out there, and just like you can hack your body, but also that what's interesting to me is like every kingdom, right? There's like plants that can improve your brain. There's plants that can make you hallucinate, and then there's mushrooms that can improve your brain or make you hallucinate or help you sleep. And it's amazing to me that our brain is so responsive to all these different compounds. I would love if you kind of laid out the landscape a little bit from your perspective, because you're probably one of the only people who's done more research than me on this. What are the different compounds out there that people are using? What's good about them? What's bad about them? I mean, everyone has seen someone take Adderall. There's so much more out there for people to discover when it comes to optimizing their brain performance.
Yeah, and I think it's first important to understand that the brain is just a really complex organ. Yes. And there's not just one supplement or one drug that's going to take care of everything. Right. That's I kind of get frustrated when I look at the supplement industry, and you see these general nootropic formulas that have 15 different ingredients, and this formula is good for mood, energy, sleep, memory. Right. And it's just, it doesn't work like that, And right. I've tried all those supplements as well, and it doesn't work like that. So there's several different approaches. And I'll start with the most basic, is supporting amino acids, which are the building blocks to certain neurotransmitters. So you have 4 main neurotransmitters in the brain, and these are responsible for different areas of cognition or different feelings that you have. empathy, focus, mood, memory, the ability to concentrate. These all rely on levels of different neurotransmitters. So you can help boost the production of certain neurotransmitters by providing them, think of it as the food that those neurotransmitters like to eat.
Yeah.
So you can get specific amino acid building blocks and vitamin and mineral cofactors. This is what your brain uses to convert an amino acid into a neurotransmitter.
Right.
You can support it that way, and that's a really gentle way to do it. Another way is an esterase inhibitor. So specifically herbs. So if you think of the amino acid building blocks, you're kind of filling up a bathtub, say with water. The esterase inhibitors, you're plugging the gaps. So these neurotransmitters, they're meant to be on a certain level. There's a balance. If you become too high, your brain tries to kind of balance everything out into an equilibrium. Right. And so there's these enzymes that naturally break down neurotransmitters. And so another way to improve a certain neurotransmitter activity is to stop the degradation. Right. Is to stop it from leaking out of that bathtub.
Or stop the reuptake, right?
Right, the reuptake, okay. Or just to make sure that you actually keep that elevated amount for a longer period of time so that you can feel that benefit. And so those ingredients will be like a huperzine A, is a choline esterase inhibitor. Rosemary is a GABA esterase inhibitor. So GABA esterase is the enzyme that breaks down GABA, the neurotransmitter. So if we can inhibit that enzyme, you can make sure you have more GABA in your brain for a longer period of time. And you could do both, right? You can give your brain the building blocks, the nutrients that it wants to make that neurotransmitter, and you can add ingredients to help slow the degradation. But what I found and what I think is most powerful is focusing just on these individual neurotransmitters and not trying to activate dopamine and serotonin and acetylcholine all at the same time.
Right. Now, give me a little bit of a landscape of because I know creativity chemically in the brain is a very different thing than focus, for example, although they overlap, right? And you're kind of working these different chemicals in different mixtures to get different emotions, different psychological states, mental states. I mean, let's start with GABA. Like, what would happen if I had more GABA in my brain? Why would I want that?
Yeah, so GABA is going to help you calm down. It's going to help you relax, slow your racing thoughts. So if you become low in GABA, if you become deficient in that neurotransmitter, then you're going to become overstimulated, anxious, nervous, having trouble falling asleep. If you're laying in bed with a million things on your mind, you're low in GABA. Wow. You know, if your normal levels in GABA, you're going to be able to relax and fall asleep. Your brain wants to do that at night. And so GABA naturally is kind of more produced in the evening times, but it's different for different people. And what I think is super interesting in taking this way back to just fundamental brain health and neuroscience is that these four neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, and GABA, are responsible for who you are. They're responsible for your personality. Right. Yeah. And everyone has a different personality, and it's defined by these little chemicals in your brain. And I know that sounds like really basic, but everyone naturally is dominant in a neurotransmitter. And that just means that the brain metabolizes that neurotransmitter better than others. And maybe it has a trouble metabolizing other neurotransmitters. Maybe if you had ADD, you had trouble metabolizing dopamine. And maybe you're much better at metabolizing serotonin or acetylcholine.
Right.
But everyone has that dominance, and that defines who they are. And of course, this changes day by day, almost hour by hour, based on what you're eating and how you're exercising in your environment, the people you're around. But if you think of that every day happens a certain way, and that compounds into your life and who you are. Wow. And so if you think of someone, you're like, oh, that person's always outgoing. That's a bubbly person. Maybe they're probably dominant in acetylcholine. Wow. Or if you look at this person and they're really empathetic, they really understand everyone. They're a helpful person. Maybe they're a dominant GABA person.
Wow. You know
And
what's
it's
so
so
cool?
powerful. Yeah, it's really cool.
What's so cool about what you're saying, as you're speaking, I'm thinking two different things. One, it's the mixture of these four, because there's only these four, that makes every mood and every situation, from having an ayahuasca trip to the best writing you've ever done. It's just a unique combination of these four. And recently I've been reading a lot about human evolution, and I realized, like, that's not uncommon in nature, because it's the same four building blocks that make DNA that separate you from a piece of lettuce. So it's amazing, like, these combinations that you can get of four things strung together in different states. And then the other thing that I'm thinking that's so fascinating, four, what else are there four of? The, like, signs, like your fire sign or your water. And I'm just thinking, I've had a number of people on the show who talk about Chinese medicine, Eastern medicine, and they're like, oh, you're a classic fire sign. And I would bet, I don't know enough about this, but I would bet you, if you did the tests on people, that Chinese medicine sign would correspond exactly to this. It's just neuroscience proving what Eastern medicine has known for years. And I am a classic fire sign, and I do have that classic, no matter what situation, I'm always going to be more energetic, more silly, more whatever. GABA is not my dominant,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
No,
really
absolutely.
cool.
Absolutely. And there are more than four neurotransmitters, but these are the four main neurotransmitters that really define what's going on in your brain.
Right.
And yeah, when I was researching this was several years ago, I was just putting together a PowerPoint presentation for a training that I was doing. And I got kind of deep. I went down the rabbit hole, but I was looking at personality tests. Mm-hmm. And I started with just the Myers-Briggs. And then I'd had to look it up. It's been a few years, but I went to like 4 or 5 of the most well-respected personality tests, and they're all broken out into quadrants.
Yep.
There's four main quadrants, and I just quickly linked which neurotransmitter goes to each quadrant for these like 4 or 5 different personality tests, and it was just so spot on. It's really interesting.
Wow, you're right. DISC, MBTI,
Yep.
Colby, StrengthsFinder, they're all quadrants.
Yep.
Isn't that wild? And yet in nature, everything is either rule of threes or base 10, but it's somehow in this and in DNA, it's 4. Wild. So tell me a bit more about compounds. You have caffeine, you have other xanthine class chemicals, you have omegas, which are really valuable. I separately want to ask you about magnesium, because we could do a whole podcast just on magnesium.
Yeah.
You mentioned huperzine A. There are all of your I always forget the name of this class of chemicals, but racetams.
Racetams, yep.
Yeah, like, sort it out for me.
Sure. So nootropics, those are all nootropics. And some people think nootropic has a negative connotation or something. It's kind of a shady word, but it's not. It simply means it just means cognitive enhancing substance in some way. And so the very basic generalization is you have natural nootropics and synthetic nootropics.
Right.
So an Adderall or a racetam, which is a Russian developed drug, these are synthetics. These are made in the lab, and they're a little more powerful. Rather than going the natural metabolism of, say, dopamine and supporting that natural metabolism, you're just like skipping a few steps and you're saying, boom, this is turned on. You're going to have massive amounts of dopamine for this amount of time. Right. And it's a little more invasive. And so caffeine is the most common or commonly used nootropic. And that acts mostly on dopamine, but it does have an energizing effect as well. Then we have the amino acids, like we've already talked about, the esterase inhibitors, which will be like a huperzine A. Then you have blood vacilators, and that will be like a vinpocetine or a ginkgo biloba. Mm-hmm. Those are blood vacilators. So those are helping get blood flow into your brain. Yeah. The racetams are really interesting. They focus more on short-term memory. And I think there's another way to think about it is inside of the brain cell and outside of the brain cell, intracellular versus intercellular. Yeah. So you kind of want to improve both. Intercellular is where your neurotransmitters hang out. They hang out in between your brain cells, and you want to elevate certain levels of neurotransmitters, specifically at certain times of day or certain situations, to optimize what you're doing. But then you really want to optimize your actual brain cell and what's going on inside of the brain cell. So that would be mitochondrial health. That would be things like lion's mane to promote nerve growth factor, things like bio-PQQ to maintain that receptor health. So there's lots of ways to go down. There's also nutrients that you can use to help improve long-term potentiation and actual memory creation.
Really?
Yes, we have a product.
I've never heard of this.
And this happens inside of the brain cell, so intracellular.
Right.
Is where cyclic AMP, which then leads to Kreb, which is similar to my last name, which then leads to long-term potentiation. And so you can take nutrients to improve the amount of cyclic AMP, the messenger systems inside of your neurons, which then leads to a cascade which goes to better learning and memory through long-term potentiation. Wow. And so that happens inside of the brain cell, and you can support that at the same time as you're supporting certain neurotransmitters that happen outside of the brain cell, which then there's a synapse and those neurotransmitters go into the brain cell. So you kind of have to think of it in a biological neurotransmitter way to understand how all these nutrients work and how they might fit together.
That's wild. It's amazing to me that you've learned so much about this. I didn't, when I was reviewing you, I didn't catch a degree in neuroscience, so it's quite impressive that you've picked this up. All right, at this point, I want to pause and take a moment to thank our sponsor, Four Sigmatic, who is making it easy for everyday people to unlock the incredible health benefits of mushrooms. I originally learned about Four Sigmatic when I met their founder at a conference in 2015, and I have been pretty much obsessed with their products ever since. Personally, I use their reishi mushroom tea most nights for an all-natural sleep aid. I carry their chaga immunity blend anytime I travel. And I've also pretty much switched out my usual coffee or yerba mate for their unbelievably awesome mushroom coffee, either in ground or in instant form. Now, what I love about the mushroom coffee is that it combines chaga for immune support with lion's mane for intense focus. And because of that, I actually find it to be more effective than most nootropics or stimulants, including Ritalin, despite having only 40 milligrams of caffeine. It's honestly insane. If you haven't tried out their products, I strongly, strongly recommend you do so. And to encourage you to give them a try, we've actually teamed up with Four Sigmatic to bring you an incredible 15% discount. To take advantage of that, just visit foursigmatic.com/superhuman today. All right, back to the show. How do people know what the right substance is for them with all these different things? I mean, I don't know how to check if my mitochondria need help, or maybe I just need more GABA. So what's a framework for people to safely experiment maybe and find the right thing for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a question that I get all the time. And
right.
Now at our company, we have 10 different brain supplements. And so they're all doing very different things, but someone's like, which one's for me, or why should I take this one over the other one? And it all comes down to just being more introspective and understanding yourself and what you need. And so it starts off and people are like, oh, my brain's just not working well. And so it's like,
You need to be a little more specific here.
Yeah, because there's first, I think it helps to understand the neurotransmitters. So dopamine is responsible for mental drive and motivation. So if you're procrastinating, you have low energy, low motivation. If you have the inability to experience pleasure, so just kind of being dull, you're low in dopamine.
Got it.
And rather than just saying, hey, I'm feeling shitty or I'm in a bad mood, it's like, define that a little more.
Right.
So dopamine is also responsible for a mood state, but so is serotonin, and serotonin is kind of the most popular one, I guess. So serotonin is responsible for that happy feeling, smiling and being in a positive mindset. Mm-hmm. So if you're low in serotonin, you're going to be a little bit depressive, low self-esteem, some negativity. And then acetylcholine is responsible for focus and the ability to concentrate and mental processing speed, like how fast is your brain working? So if you feel just mentally slow, some brain fog, or tip of the tongue syndrome is what I say. What's that one word you're thinking of? Everyone's experienced that. And if you're experiencing that, you're potentially low in acetylcholine. That's short-term memory. And so So rather than just saying, I'm having an off day, is that because you're procrastinating? Is that because you have brain fog? Is that because your brain is just slow? Is that because you have short-term memory? You can't remember where your keys are? Or is that because you're just thinking negatively and you can't get a positive mindset wrapped around your brain? And then the fourth neurotransmitter is GABA. So if you're overwhelmed, overstimulated, you're just feeling kind of anxious and nervous, and that's debilitating you. You can't focus because you're nervous or you're anxious about something. Then that's because your GABA is low at that time. So I think it's most important to be as introspective as possible, and not just you're in a good or bad mood, but define that. Think about it a little further. How actually are you feeling? How are you interacting with others? How are you interacting with your work? And then the better you can define that, the better you can help yourself.
I really like that, and I almost feel like we just built, because we have courses for different situations. You're in this financial situation, you need Brandon's course on career hacking. If you're in this other situation, maybe you need a learning course. So we built. I feel like we should share on this. I would happy to connect you with my guys. They built a whole quiz on our website where it's like when you enroll in our website, it's like what's going on right now in your life. It asks them like 5 questions. And it's like, okay, don't get distracted by any other course. Just take this one course. I feel like you could do that for your products. The question I have is, you mentioned earlier on. You mentioned kind of like you may be GABA dominant, and that's kind of your thing. But then you also mentioned like if you're in a shitty mood, kind of short term. How do you use your own products? Like, do you find that you're always using the one that is for the chemical that you're always kind of deficient in, or do you mix it up? Is that introspective process that you're doing, is that happening every single day, or every 12 hours you're like, oh, I'm feeling a little bit jittery? How frequently do you take the ones that are not your natural kind of chronotype?
That's a great question. Thank you. So it's kind of a mix of both. Mm-hmm. And so I have found over time that I am serotonin dominant and I am slightly deficient in dopamine. Okay. And that's, I think, my dopamine deficiency got worse in that time I was describing when I was procrastinating a lot and I just wasn't getting my work done very efficiently. I was working a ton. I was doing a lot of stuff, but I just wasn't getting much stuff done. And so that's related to dopamine. So there is a quiz you can take online. It's called the Braverman Assessment. Braverman Assessment. Dr. Eric Braverman. This came out maybe 10 years ago. It's qualitative, so it's not, it's not science per se, but it's more psychology. And it's like 200 questions, but it goes like true or false. It goes pretty quickly. And at the end, it tells you which neurotransmitter you're dominant in and what you're deficient in. And that test result can change day by day for sure. There's also a urine test you can do that tests the metabolites of certain neurotransmitters. So that tells you how well you're creating neurotransmitters. But I still think the most powerful thing is just being introspective and saying, how am I feeling right now? And getting that as deep as you can go. So for me, we have a product called Dopamine Brain Food, and I take that every morning. And if I miss it, I know it. I tend to start to procrastinate a little bit. And so I really need to support that dopamine metabolism in my brain. And so that's one that I go to every day. Then the other ones I use on a regular basis. And on a regular basis, I mean 2 or 3 days a week. Cool. And so this morning, I took our acetylcholine brain food because I knew I was doing this interview and I wanted to support my short-term memory and my verbal fluency. Mm-hmm. And that helps. Acetylcholine is really important in that. So this morning, I took my dopamine brain food and I took my acetylcholine brain food because I knew I was doing this activity. So I support the neurotransmitters not only based on how I feel, but what I'm about to be doing. And you can improve your situation by improving your mindset and your mood. So, and this is very relatable to work. If you're doing research and you're reading and you're writing, maybe you want more creativity. Whereas if you're just doing filling in numbers, maybe you want more of that focus. Right. But also if you're trying to meditate, you can support that with GABA. If you're going on a walk in the woods, you can support that with serotonin. So you really want to optimize to the activity. So it's both. You want to really be introspective. And yes, this happens multiple times per day. Every few hours, I try to look at myself and say, what did I just do the last 2 hours? Was I productive? And what's on my to-do list? How can I help myself get there? Or what's holding me back from getting there? And so that happens every few hours. But then also I look at my calendar and I say, oh, tomorrow at 3 p.m., I need to be sharp. I'm doing this specific activity. So how can I optimize that?
I love that. It's similar to how I have started treating my exercise and diet. Like, I really need to be eating a lot of fat because I'm going to be recording podcasts for 6 hours. I want to be satiated all day. I want to get into ketosis. And that's become automatic for me. I just think in that way. We're going to have a really intense workout tomorrow morning. I need some form of carbohydrate. One question I want to ask, your Siltep product, which I've tried and I loved, it doesn't have any of the usual candidates that you would see in a normal nootropic that anyone else is selling, and yet it works very well. Tell me about that. Like, I don't even know what Coleus for Scoli is. Tell me about the formula.
Yeah, and that's one that I mentioned earlier on in the show that really helps with long-term potentiation and improving memory creation. And so that's an interesting formula. We launched with that product, and I didn't formulate it. I found it. A guy named Abelard Lindsay is a Silicon Valley programmer. He is literally one of the smartest people I know. He wants to live forever. And this is legitimate. And, one of the theories that is floating around is that one way you can achieve that transhumanism is offloading your brain, your cognition, your consciousness onto a computer.
Right.
And so his goal, Abelard Lindsay, is to get his own brain as smart as possible, memorize, learn as much as he can, and improve all of his neurotransmitter health and improve his brain to the point where he's confident that when he offloads it to a computer, he's going to be happy with that brain that he has for the next, hundreds of thousands of years. So this guy, I'm just giving you a little background because that's his mindset. He was trying to develop a natural supplement to improve learning and memory.
Wow.
And he was reading some papers on a drug called Relipram. This was in development a decade ago or so, and it was getting a lot of press. They were just doing studies on mice, but they were having huge initial success. And this was going to be an Alzheimer's dementia drug. And Forbes actually wrote an article and they called it the Viagra for the brain.
Wow.
They were turning on these mice brain, and these mice were completing the mazes super quickly, but they had this horrible side effect. They had this violent vomiting, and that they couldn't solve for it, and the drug never made it past development. But Abelard Lindsay was looking at these results, and the pathway in the brain is called PDE4 inhibition. And they've been trying to develop a PDE4 inhibitor drug for years, but they never got past. It's historically hard for a human or a rat body to absorb these PDE4 inhibitors. You just literally have to vomit them out.
Whoa.
And so he started looking at what are some natural ingredients that maybe can do the same effect. So PDE4 inhibitors break down cyclic AMP, cAMP. cAMP are the messenger systems inside of your neurons. They bind onto the neurotransmitters when there's a synapse. And so they are responsible for the fluid thought and for the transmission of your neurotransmitters in your brain, if you think of it that way, like fuel kind of for your neurotransmitters. This happens inside the brain cell. And so Coleus forscholi, one of the main ingredients, is very well known to increase cyclic AMP in your brain. But it's not very powerful. It's not that strong. And then he combined that with artichoke extract. Artichoke extract contains a compound called luteolin, which is a natural PDE4 inhibitor. So again, the PDE4 inhibitor slows the breakdown of cyclic AMP. And you take artichoke extract on its own, you're not going to feel anything. But artichoke extract actually has a lot of positive benefits in your gut. It's good for digestion. It's good for bile production. No one has a negative gut or a throw up disease problem with artichoke extract. So the synergy of artichoke extract and coleus for scoli maintain an elevated amount of cyclic AMP in your brain for a longer period of time. And that's how that formula works. Just those 2 ingredients. The formula has 5 ingredients, has a couple amino acids just to try to ward off some afternoon fatigue. But that's it. Just those 2 ingredients will make it work. We actually, Abelard Lindsay in NaturalStacks, we have a patent on it. It was so unique, and it's very hard to get a patent on a natural formula because everything's already been done before. And this was so unique, and it's so powerful. And you've taken it before. The most people feel results within about 30 minutes on the first dose, but the way it works is so different. You get this feeling of engagement, and that's the best word I found to describe it. Is you're just more engaged, and that allows you to limit distraction, and that causes some mental fascination, almost a novelty effect is what I say. So cool. Novelty, I'll just go in 1 minute about this. If you think about novelty, memories are created when you're experiencing novelty. It's really easy to create memories when you're experiencing novelty. So if you went on a vacation as a child, you went to a beach, you've never seen sand that soft, you've never smelt flowers like that, you've never tasted a coconut. All these are new senses, and when you're experiencing novelty, your brain is turned on. And it's so easy to create new memories. And that's why you have vivid memories of these vacations you went on 10 years ago, or vivid memories of like a car crash, or like a surprise birthday party, or these novel experiences. That's what Siltep does, is it clicks on this feeling of novelty, which gives you mental fascination, wants you to do something, and it makes you very engaged. And so, yeah, that's this super interesting product. It's probably the most interesting one we have. But what's cool about it is that's all happening inside of the brain cell, so that we can alter neurotransmitter levels, and that's a completely different mechanism. So it's not like stepping on the toes of each other. We're not doing everything with one formula. This formula increases cyclic AMP, which increases long-term potentiation, which helps with engagement, focus, and memory. But then on top of that, you can improve these different neurotransmitter levels.
That's wild to me. Now, talk to me about magnesium. I know you guys are passionate about magnesium. What's the deal, right? Because first off, most people don't realize they're magnesium deficient, and yet most people are magnesium deficient. And if they are aware, they're like, oh, you need magnesium because it's good for digestion and muscle recovery. But it's actually used for 1,200 processes in the body. I don't actually know anything about what magnesium does in the brain. So tell me more about that.
And so magnesium, like you said, everyone's deficient. I think one study found that more than 50% of adults, and then like more than 70 or 80% of elderly adults, this is in America, are deficient in magnesium. And a couple of reasons, but one is that you get magnesium in your diet from green leafy vegetables. People don't eat very many of those. And even if you do, our soils are pretty far depleted of the natural minerals. And also orally, your body's just not good at absorbing minerals. Transdermal is the best way to get minerals into your system. So an Epsom salt bath or a magnesium lotion is really the most effective way to get magnesium into your body quickly. Your insides, your stomach and your intestine are really poor at absorbing minerals, all kinds of minerals, zinc as well. But your body's really good at absorbing amino acids. So if you're taking a magnesium supplement, it has to be chelated, or some people call it chelated. And all that means is it's bound to an amino acid. So they combine the magnesium molecule to an amino acid so that your body absorbs it really easily, because your body's good at absorbing amino acids.
Got it.
And so that's the biggest thing to look for if you're going to take a magnesium supplement, is that it has to be chelated to actually get any benefits, because magnesium oxide is the most common magnesium supplement that's not chelated. Most people will get some loose stools or some gastro discomfort because your body just can't absorb it. The next grade up will be magnesium citrate, which is still pretty low quality. It's like 30% absorbed. It's magnesium that's bound to citric acid. So it's a little bit rough on your gut, but it works decently. But then you get into these really high quality forms of magnesium, like magnesium glycinate, magnesium taurate, and that's magnesium that's bound to glycine, and magnesium that's bound to taurine. And these amino acids also have their own functional benefits. So combined, they become really powerful, and you're getting closer to like 80-85% absorption rates of the magnesium. Right. But yeah, magnesium, people don't realize how important it is. And I think most people are running around deficient, and it in the short term will lead to some fatigue, muscle cramping, muscle soreness, maybe a little lightheadedness, mood issues. So serotonin metabolism needs magnesium. So mood issues, trouble sleeping, those will kind of be the first trigger signs. But then over time, and this is a massive problem, at least in the United States, is heart disease.
Really?
Your heart requires magnesium just to beat. It needs that mineral to be able to beat. And over 20, 30, 40, 50 years of being deficient in magnesium, it turns into heart disease. Wow. In the brain, it's required for that synapse to happen. So it increases synaptic connectivity, and it allows those neurotransmitters to bind to the neurons more efficiently. So that's how it works in the brain. I take magnesium every day. I take it at night. It's relaxing. So it's not going to like knock you out like a sleep supplement, but it is a little bit relaxing. So I think it's more conducive to take it at night. And I think of it as like restoring and energizing my brain at night, so I can wake up with like a refreshed brain that's ready to go.
Right. Yeah, I do the same thing. I take it at night, and it definitely does help me relax and wind down. Really, really fascinating as well that so many people could be taking a mag supplement and just getting no benefits out of it.
Yeah, it's really tough for a consumer. If you go to a health food store, you'll see 100 different magnesiums, and they're ranging from $5 to $50. Right. And unfortunately, you're going to have to go with one of the more expensive versions, something that's fully chelated to get the full benefits. And here, a little trick for your listeners is look for something that ends in an ATE. Yeah. Yeah. And that will mean it's chelated to an amino acid, and that will mean you can actually absorb it.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Now, I know we're coming up on time here. I do want to talk to you about sleep, because I know, you guys sell a lot of products for getting the brain more focused and more attentive, but also you and I share this fascination with sleep and how to sleep better, sleep healthier, and sleep faster. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've tried all the hacks yourself, but really it starts just super basic, and I'm sure you're aware, but make sure your environment's good. No junk light and no junk sound coming into your sleep room. So black out the curtains. If you live in a city or something and there's honking dogs barking, get a noise machine, get some earplugs. Really just, you kind of just have to fix your environment first. And so that's light and sound. You got to get them out. And some healthy air too. I noticed some people just like, they box themselves up in this little sleep room and they're not getting, they're just like recirculating the same air. You have some airflow as well. Right. People don't talk about that, but then it's getting your mind right. And yeah, there's, stop looking at TV screens and phone screens a couple hours before sleep, or at least get the filters on your screens. Dim the lights, very basic things, but then how do you get your mind ready for sleep? And I think it is a pretty common problem that people, they want to sleep, they go into their bed, but they're just rolling around and they're so focused on wanting to sleep, and they become anxious about that. And then they start worrying about what they have to do 6 hours in the morning, and then the sleep just doesn't happen. So yeah, it's GABA is that neurotransmitter that you really want to support in the evening time. But you want to just turn off that reptilian brain and be able to actually calm down and actually just slow down all your thoughts, so you get to the point you're not thinking about anything. And that's the goal. And that's the kind of the goal with meditation too, right? You try to filter out all of your thoughts so that then you can become truly calm. What I found that really helps is box breathing. So breathing in, so you imagine a box has four sides. and give a second count to each side. I usually start with 4 seconds, and I usually try to increase that to like 6 or maybe even more seconds.
Right.
But it's breathe in for 4 seconds, 4 long seconds, hold that breath for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, and then the hard part is not to breathe in for 4 seconds. And then do that for like 10, 20 times, and then increase it to like 5 or 6 seconds. And you get to the point where all you're thinking about is the slow, intentful breath.
Really cool.
And if you're just only focused on that breath, all of a sudden your other thoughts kind of disappear. And you just, because you're really slowing down your heart rate as well, you get to the point where you can just fall asleep. And I've done this multiple times. I kind of have trouble falling asleep, and I'll just do this for literally like 1 or 2 minutes, and I'm asleep.
Amazing. That's a power
really
tip right there.
Yeah.
Very cool. Roy, I know we've pretty much come up on time here. I know we could talk for hours and hours and hours. I do want to give you an opportunity. Where can people reach out, learn more about you? We'll put all the links in the podcast episode, but for people driving in their car right now, where should we send folks? Sure.
Well, if you want to just talk to me, I love talking with people, and just any questions you have about your own brain or how I might be able to help. Roy@naturalstacks.com. That's my email. I try to answer emails, within 24 hours. So please contact me. Our website, naturalstacks.com. And then we also have an offer if people wanted to try these neurotransmitter brain food products for themselves. Trybrainfood.com. Trybrainfood.com. We have a special offer
right now.
So you can try
Trybrainfood.com.
You can try all 4 of these neurotransmitter support products for half off. So if someone was just trying to get into brain hacking or understanding their own brain, or how can we improve these different neurotransmitters, it's a great place to start. But I also recommend people take this quiz online, the Braverman assessment. If you really want to dig deep, you should read his book, Dr. Eric Braverman. He wrote The Edge Effect. That's what it's called. There's also the Mood Cure is a good book that kind of falls on the same thing of relating neurotransmitters to how you're feeling at any given time. But yeah, powerful stuff. It's fun stuff. Any questions, please do reach out to me, Roy@naturalstacks.com.
Awesome. I'm literally filling out the order form right now to order some of this stuff to get to my hotel next time I'm going to be in the U.S. So thank you for that offer. And I can tell folks it's a super generous offer as well, which is why I'm taking advantage of it. One last question that I have for you, Roy, before we let you go. If people take away one big message from this episode and carry it with them for the rest of their lives, what would you hope for that one to be?
One message, something that always stuck with me is, in every problem is an opportunity. And, I think that's been floated around for a while, but it really is true. If you have a roadblock, fix it. If something's not wrong, act. And change your setting, change your mindset. But it's once you start attacking a certain problem, all of a sudden an opportunity arises. And I don't know if it's magic, but it just kind of happens that you're working on something and you'll see that, wow, maybe this is what I should have been working on, or maybe this problem brought light to something else. So yeah, if there's something in your life that you're not happy with, or, and that could be your mood, your mindset, your motivation, your sleep, fix it. Don't let it linger on. Just attack, and you'll notice that some opportunity will arise that you'll be happy you did so.
I feel the exact same way. Movement in any direction creates movement in every direction. So I appreciate you sharing that tip. And I'm going to let you go so you can go ship my order, though I'm sure someone else ships the orders. But really appreciate you coming on the show today. I learned a lot, which is not an easy feat after 250 episodes. A lot of which I like to talk about the brain and memory. So cheers, and thanks very much for coming on.
Thank you.
Take care, my friend.
Yep.
Thanks for tuning in to the award-winning Superhuman Academy podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit superhuman.blog. While you're at it, please take a moment to share this episode with a friend and leave us a review on iTunes. We'll see you next week.